AlexForbes has released its Sustainability Index, which covers the membership of South African medical aid schemes. It's found that medical schemes remained resilient during the pandemic, even in the face of higher unemployment and the tough economic environment. Well, to tell us more about their findings, I'm joined by Paresh Prema. He's the health branch head at AlexForbes. Thank you very much for joining us, Paresh. So your report notes that membership of medical aid schemes remained fairly resilient during the time of COVID. Please expand on your findings and also just tell us what period you're looking at.
Good day. Thank you for the opportunity. Good day to the viewers. Our findings looks at the period until the end of December 2020. And it's based on the report from the Council for Medical Schemes, which publishes annually in terms of the medical schemes industry. We find that at the end of 2020, the number of members of medical schemes reduced by about 1%. Compared to the increase in unemployment during 2020, we see that medical schemes membership has remained relatively stable over the period from 2019 to 2020. There are other factors also that our report takes into account, including the solvency of medical schemes, the claims experience, and the overall health of medical schemes in the industry. Our solvency index then uses this information to gauge the relative health of medical schemes in the industry.
So what was your observation around the rate of claims and what were they generally in relation to?
So the rate of claims, when we measured, it's the proportion of premiums that were paid towards claims. And we found in 2020, there was a reduction in the claims that were paid for members of medical schemes. We find that for open-end, closed or restricted schemes, we've seen that reduced by almost 10% during the period, meaning that people were claiming less. And we all understand due to the pandemic and lockdown measures, people that would normally go for their elective sort of procedures or seeing specialists and doctors, that usage reduced where focus was more on the COVID pandemic. So we've seen less claims coming through, meaning an increase in reserves and solvency of medical schemes, which is to the ultimate benefit of members.
I suppose 2020 was a bit of an abnormal year, given the fact that we were experiencing the very deep part of the pandemic. And as you say, many people could not go for, elective surgeries and things like that. Presumably, when you reflect on what happened in 2021, the data is going to be quite different because there's been quite a bit of normalization, although 2021 was still a fairly odd year as well.
What we find is a mixture of some schemes going back to the normal claims pattern slowly over 2021, and some still remaining in terms of the slightly improved from the 2020 experience, but not as much as previous years. We compare to normally the last year where the claims were normal before the pandemic in 2019, but we see majority of the schemes still not coming back to those levels. We are observing it continuously to see whether the schemes that we work on would return to levels that were pre-COVID levels. But as you mentioned, 2021 was still a year with ups and downs and the waves that were experienced. So it is it's not a back to normal situation at the moment.
Yeah, given the relatively low claims rate during 2020, I suppose this is an odd question, but one that I'll pose nonetheless. We know that over the years, there's been a level of consolidation among medical aid schemes to better help them to be sustainable. Has that trend been continuing, and what is the sustainability of smaller schemes relative to bigger ones?
So the trend continues maybe at a slower pace at the moment. And what we find with the 2020 experience, medical scheme solvency and the reserves that they hold has increased to over 40% compared to the 25% solvency requirement that they had. And that is across the board between your closed and open schemes and the smaller schemes as well, because they all experienced a reduction in claims resulting in their reserves increasing. But what we find with that is it allows schemes to increased reserves, which increases the sustainability of those schemes. So when we look at the smaller schemes, we see them generally having higher reserves and are more stable in terms of their claims profile when we look at employer-based schemes. So we do not necessarily see a trend increasing. It may slow down the trend in consolidation over time.
Excellent. Paresh, thank you very much for giving us a few of those headlines from your report of 2020. That was Paresh Prema. He's the health branch head at AlexForbes.